Hello everybody, it's me, Wolfborg, the guy that made Rapid Tap. And from that experience of making Rapid Tap, we're going to talk about the Steam process. If you have a game and you want to release onto Steam, you're probably interested in the Steam Direct process. What is the Steam Direct program exactly? How is it different from Steam Greenlight that you've heard about? And is this something you should go through? And if you do go through with it, how much work are you in for to release your game onto Steam? How long does it take generally? We're going to go through all of this, and then I'll show you guys some stuff with my game Rapid Tap as an example. Now, this is from the perspective of a game that released for free. I have one other app currently pending, because I haven't finished it yet, met the requirements to publish it yet, for a paid game. But this is from the perspective of a free game at this point. For the most part, what I can tell, there's not too much difference, but we'll go over that. My free game that I have out there, Rapid Tap, it's not a huge game. It has around 20,000 plus downloads, but it is enough for me to have learned a lot about how the Steam process works and some of the different nuances. And most importantly, it's given me an insight on some weird things that some developers can do with how the platform is currently set up. Some things they abuse, other things they just kind of have to suffer through, like all of us. And we're going to go over them step by step. So the first step, I released Rapid Tap. We're going to talk a little bit about my history. Rapid Tap, I developed on a live stream in 2017, the end of 2017, with the intention of releasing it onto Google Play, iOS Store, and Steam, because Steam Direct was just announced at the time. And my goal was to learn how the process for all these platforms worked and compare them, because I had just finished my final exam ever of college. And the day after that, I was so relieved, I just wanted to do a 12-hour live stream of just making a game. And Rapid Tap was the result. Now, it's not a very intricate game. Very simplistic. It's kind of like Whack-A-Mole with memes, pretty much. Most of the memes being my face, which apparently the Twitter community I'm in was a meme for a while. That's a whole inside thing in itself. Released Rapid Tap onto Steam in the beginning of 2018. So I finished the game in 2017, but figuring out the whole process for how you actually upload it to Steam and getting it uploaded to Steam happened at the beginning of 2018, back when I moved back home and got all settled in. I started the process of actually uploading it to Steam. It actually got uploaded to Google Play beforehand, and then iOS after Steam. And we're going to compare how all these different platforms work. So first, let's talk how these pricings work with the different platforms. Steam Direct, at least, you pay $100 per title, and they tell you it's recoupable. So if your game makes $1,000, you get that initial $100 you paid back. This is because Steam will take 30% of your game's cut of the profits. So, you know, for every dollar you make, they make 30 cents, you make 70 cents. And then taxes all happen. So by the time you earn $1,000, Steam earns $300. So they send you that back. So that's all good. 100 is a fairly reasonable price for a lot of beginning devs to be able to have a platform where they can upload to. Google Play is a little different. Google Play actually works kind of similar to how Steam Greenlight worked, with one key difference. So Google Play, you pay $100, and that's basically for the lifetime of your Google developer account. You can upload as many apps and games as you want onto the Google Play Store. Paid or unpaid, I believe it doesn't matter. From my experience, I don't think it matters. You just pay the $100, and for the lifetime of your game developer account or Google developer account, you can upload as many as you want. I believe Android has automated checks for your game to make sure everything's working with it. I don't think an actual person on their end actually looks at it, which is why a lot of the Google Play Store is like the Wild Wild West. And it's kind of a big meme, especially with like bootleg mobile games out there and a whole bunch of weird, sketchy apps all over the place there. It's because a lot of that system is just kind of automated. There's not a lot of checks, and it's a very low entry point. You pay $100 once, and you can upload as many apps as you want onto there. The difference between Google Play and how Steam Greenlight worked is essentially just that Greenlight was the same thing. You pay $100 and you can upload as many titles as you want or attempt to. The community had to pretty much vote to say that they wanted this game. And there was a lot of problems with how that system worked. A lot of people were paying people to basically vote for their game so that it gets approved. Or sometimes I think if it was declined, you could just resubmit it. And sometimes their automated system would just approve it or not approve it based on like if literally anybody wanted the game. So there was a lot of issues Steam had with that. And eventually they just scrapped it and said literally anybody can upload a game onto Steam as long as they pay $100 per title. And if their game makes $1,000, we'll give them that initial $100 back. For added protection, they also do on Steam, they do review, they do one initial review of your store page in your game. And we'll go into more detail about that later. But they do one initial human review of your store page and game before anybody can purchase or download it. And it helps weed out a lot of the sketchy, bad things that you could get with something like the Google Play store. So Google Play was the easiest to upload to, but it also makes it very hard to get found in among all the other garbage that's on there. And it's just... Google Play is riddled with a whole bunch of bad stuff. Just go look at the bootleg stuff Twitter page if you want some examples on there. I'm sure Kennedy has uploaded some good images onto there before. Apple, on the other hand, was, in my experience, the most annoying to work with. Because, and I can do a whole separate talk about this, and I probably will in the future, but the main thing here we're talking about is pricing. So for Apple, you have to pay $100 per year to keep your apps on the store. Now, from what I recall, I think they only were doing this for free games. So if you wanted your free game, which in my case it was a free game, if you wanted your free game to stay on the iOS App Store, you had to pay $100 per year to keep it on there. And if you didn't pay it, it would be taken off the App Store. And that's why Rapid Tap, even though it was on the App Store for 2 years, is no longer on there now as of this year, 2019, because I am done trying to pay Apple every year when they make my life very difficult. They make your life very difficult unless you own like 4 Apple devices, pretty much. I think it's like you have to own like 2 or 3 Apple devices to at all upload to the App Store. Even if you make it in an engine like Unity, where you know it's going to work on these other devices, even if you don't own them yourself, like I do, because I don't feel like buying overpriced Apple products. But it's all right. I get it, Apple. You don't like people doing it. That's fine. I was able to get some workarounds by using emulators and borrowing my friend's, I communicated with my friend while he used his Mac pretty much, and we uploaded to it based on that. So it was basically like I borrowed his Mac to upload to the store or whatever to do updates for a time until I got a proper emulation working myself. But now they've stopped doing that, so I stopped paying them. They stopped letting you do that kind of stuff, so I stopped going with that, and now that's off the App Store. Now, Steam Direct is probably the best way to meet in the middle between Google Play and Apple. Now, Apple, for I guess the other plus though, any app update you do, a human has to check. It can take some days for your app to update to be approved, unless you're a really popular app probably. Then they'll probably bump you up in priority. But everybody else has to wait in line forever. And they will give you proper descriptions, full-fledged like reports on what you need to fix for your game to be approved and anything like that. I have some other issues with Apple's processes, but that'll be a whole different talk for a whole different time. But, okay. So, the pricing, for the most part, with Steam is a pretty fair compromise between Google Play and Apple. Just $100 a title. You can upload as many as you want, as long as you pay the $100 for each one, and you don't have to like pay a yearly subscription to be a part of the Steam Direct program, like you would for the Apple Developer Program. And that's how it is right now. And to just start with an app, all you need is a name for the app, pretty much. After you fill out like some paperwork to specify yourself as a Steam developer and some tax information and stuff, you can do this. You don't have to be a company to do this. You could do this as a sole proprietor, which is what a lot of indie devs will do, myself included. You can make yourself a Steam developer as a sole proprietor. So to start up, you just need a name. To release a game, though, you need the store page and an approved game build. These are the 2 things you need to release the game on Steam. Now for the store page, and I think I should show you guys I think I can show you guys the screen at this point. There's some spoilers for later on, but we'll get through this. Okay, so For the store page, we're going to go over the two different sides. You need the store page approved, and you need the build approved. And the store page is probably where a lot of the work is going to be, because there's a lot of weird intricacies with it. Some things to note: you need a release date for your game. Your listed release date on the store page can be literally anything. You have to give Steam in the background an actual date when you hope to get your game out by, pretty much, but it does not have to actually be released by then. To give you an example of this, one of my paid apps I have on there right now pending because I haven't finished it yet or gotten it ready yet, I had started working on it towards the end of the year last year. And in fact, the listed release date on it on Steam's end is December 25th, 2018. So last Christmas, pretty much. And that's long past, but they don't penalize you for it. And if I were to finish that and publish that app today, I could still leave the listing at that. As far as I know, the background Steam release date listed and the store page Steam release date listed are different things, and I think they're sorted differently. I'm not sure which one it is, but I'm pretty sure it's the one you make up, the one you can write literally anything for to list on your store page. I think that's what gets sorted. If you sort by date, I think that's how it sorts it. But I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to test that out to confirm it. I wrote that here, but I think I'd have to test it to confirm it, and I probably can. I've seen games list them at physically impossible dates, like in the past, in like BC and shit. We've seen them listed for like Q4, some meme like that, coming winter, whatever. Like, these are just random release dates you could list them at. And I think if you physically list it, if you list on that as something that's not an official date, they will sort it by the background date that you told Steam. But if you set it to an actual date, I think it'll just put it where you set the actual listed date to be. Again, I'd have to test. Another thing that can be literally anything is the publisher and developer listing. So, you know how when you go to a page, you go to a store page, okay, and we could do this here. You go to a store page, and it says, you know, Wolfborg Games here, for example, and you click it, and sometimes, even if they're listed as two different companies, if you click either of them, it brings you to the same page. You know, sometimes you'll click them, and it'll take you, like, nowhere sometimes. Well, that's because that this is actually, you can set this to literally anything. And I think, by default, it'll go to the registered Steam developer that actually published it, but you can also set it to manually go somewhere else. So big companies like Bandai Namco will set it to go to them for like both fields. Sometimes they'll have each field set to go to a different profile, I believe. I would have to mess around with that to test that more out, but for the most part, you can literally set the listing for who the developer and publisher is to anything that you want. Steam doesn't have a check for it. Steam doesn't even have a, as far as I remember, no, wait, there is a requirement for it. You do have to fill it out, but they don't require it to be attached to the name that you, as a sole proprietor or a company, are listed as. So you, as a Steam company, don't have to have the same name affiliated at all. My current running theory is that a lot of puzzle games, right? A lot of hentai puzzle games that are trying to get quick $2 cash grabs out of a lot of people, and I guess they work because they do them every like week or two. It will be the same guy running under like 10 different names, because you can literally list your name as anything, and Steam will not have any way for the regular user to verify. Now, I haven't looked into if stuff like some of those Steam analysis websites or some of those websites with more Steam data, the metadata on the actual store pages, I don't know if those are able to grab it, but I know for the most part on the actual listed Steam pages, those can be literally anything. So you need a release date, and you need a publisher and developer name set. Those can be literally anything, and some developers use these things to abuse systems, such as the sorting algorithm if you're looking for new games, or if you're avoiding a publisher because they've released shady games in the past, they can just list themselves as a different name. Descriptions. This is a small thing that I realized. You have to have a description for the game. Now, the short description, though, that is, so you have a big description below the trailer. It's like this section here. You can make this as long as you want, but then there's the short description here. This has a 300 character limit. And they tell you this on the form that you have to fill out on the Steamworks UI. But they have no actual program check or warning message to let you know, hey, you've exceeded 300 characters. So if you ever see a game on Steam that's listed and you feel like for some reason it cuts off mid-sentence at the very end, they don't know it. They've exceeded the character limit. And if they exceed that and it gets cut off towards the end, during the Steam review process, when they're reviewing your store page, they'll let you know, like they did for me, for a free game that I'm working on with a friend of mine to get published for him. That was how I found out about that. I probably never would have noticed it myself had they not pointed that out to me during that process and figured that all out. If it ever looks like it's cut off mid-sentence toward the end, it's because with the Steam thing, it's only 300 characters is allowed here. And if it goes past that, it just cuts it off. On the back end for developers, it looks like everything's fine. Steam approves it and everything's good. But yeah, they just didn't program that in because why not? That's not like a thing really developers can abuse, I guess, but it's an annoying tick that you can deal with. And you have to keep in mind with if you publish onto Steam. You are required to do minimum specs for all the different platforms that you're supporting. If you do not list the exact specific minimum specs, like I did at one point with like the storage, when they review it, they will tell you, hey, these are not actually the minimum specs. So I tried being generous when a lot of this info I just kind of grabbed from basic Unity minimum specs required for Unity games off of like Google, and everything else was fine except for the storage, which when I submitted it, the guy had said, hey, you have to set the storage minimum to be only a little bit above what your actual game size is at the current time. I was like, okay. I think I had set it to something more generous, like 500 megabytes or something like that, or 200 megabytes or something. But he says it has to be lower, so I set it to 100 megabytes because that's about the size of Rapid as it currently is. So that was one thing I learned. You have to be accurate with this, and apparently they will check and test for this to some degree. Releasing onto all three platforms is pretty easy and straightforward, especially if you use something like Unity, an engine like Unity that will just develop all these yourself, just out of the box. You don't have to do too much else. Store page needs weird sized graphics. You see this. If you go to the community tab, because that's its own section, community groups, you see this, you see discussions. Yeah, you see this, like that kind of stuff. A lot of your assets, you would think with most platforms, with the assets, you give them one image or like a couple different types of images, and it will auto-size them all. Steam does not. Steam, you have to upload for each individual UI asset its own individual image, which has its own requirements for what kind of content it should look like, which is fair enough, but are in these weird sizes because they did not program this to be very responsive, I guess. So they're very hyper-specific, awkward sizing that you have to use for it. And I always forget all of it. Every time I try to... This is the worst part, in my opinion, of releasing a store page. Just dealing with what are the dimensions you have to make every single little intricate asset of, and they all have to be different. And, you know, depending on the kind of assets you're using for your branding, it can be really, really annoying. That was one thing I remembered. You also need library assets now. So, this is a new requirement. It was not a requirement when I released Rapid, but this is new. I believe it came out this year, during the summer, I think. So now... It used to be, if you uploaded before, it was this size, and it looked like this. Just this. But now that they added this library UI, you have to have, like, basically box art, as if you released a physical game. So I applied that as well. But you also need this. You need this, like, banner and this logo. This is a separate image, in that it's just text. You need this separate. You need this. You need this. They give you, like, a tool. So you don't have to place it here. You can place it wherever you want. And you could see the same thing on other games like the Master Chief Collection. This is its own logo. This is its own banner. And it's really, they set it up like that only because they want to do this parallaxing effect. They literally brag about it in like the place where you upload it. It's just so they could do this little parallaxing effect when you scroll down and you barely see it. So They really wanted that in, so you had to get intricate with the shit you were uploading there. But it's not too hard. There's only like 4 things they have you do for that. You upload the 3 images and you do the placement tool for this. And it's pretty easy to do. It was just weird that you had to bother with all that for this instead of just uploading one banner image. But they wanted that parallax effect for all of the 2 seconds, the like half a second that you would see it when you scroll. If your game is going to cost money, which Rabbit didn't, so fair warning, I have not released a game yet that has been a paid game. I have submitted apps before so far, even though they're not done yet, with prices on them. And I believe Steam had to approve the price you set. Usually they're just fine with whatever price you set it at. But any price changes, I believe, need approval by them. Especially if it's an increase. I think, from what I was reading, increasing your game on Steam is nearly impossible. Increasing the price of your game on Steam, nearly impossible. You can't do it. And I think that was one thing that killed any chance of a free game that I played that got shut down because the company got shut down. Oh, Icons. It was Icons. Icons Combat Arena. That game got shut down. It was a free-to-play Smash clone, pretty much, on Steam. I thought it was alright, but it could have been cool, I guess. And when I went to try it again, it was all shut down. And it turns out they were working on a definitive edition, which is basically the whole game, but you could play local co-op. They couldn't afford to run the multiplayer servers anymore or update it anymore, but they felt like, at least because of the community they raised, they wanted to be able to sell a version of the game with the local multiplayer. And they would give a copy for free in their ideal world to everybody who supported the game or had, I think, anybody who had supported the game with any microtransaction when it was a free-to-play game. That was the idea. We never heard anything back from anybody at that company because it got shut down and they didn't even have a communications person. And I think I saw for the people that were left behind or did hear back from the people that were employees there, they weren't able to get the definitive edition up on Steam because they would have had to make it a whole new listing. And they didn't have the staff anymore to make the new store page listing, and they didn't feel like doing it anymore with the company. And you can't just change the store page you have from a free-to-play game to a paid game. That's impossible. Steam does not let you do that. Steam doesn't even let you increase a price unless it's like an early access thing, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure unless it's an early access game that you're making full release, I'm pretty sure you can't increase the price. I know you can decrease the price, but I think Steam needs to approve it, and I think you're locked in with a current price for a set amount of time. Now, you can still do stuff like discounts, but Steam limits the amount of discounts you use and how long they run for and how long it takes until you can run the next one, because it's illegal to make a game be discounted forever. It's illegal. So Steam has a lot of checks and balances for that. Your game also, you need to fill out a mature content survey. You fill out the survey to say exactly if you have mature content on there, you have to specify, you type it yourself in like a text box, what, if anything, in your game could be considered mature content, with the purpose of when the Steam employee reviews your game, you know, what kind of content are they going to expect to see that's mature? And you set this yourself, and that will obviously limit your market, but Steam will review it, and for the most part, they're perfectly fine with any kind of mature content, as long as it's not exploiting children or showing depictions of minors. It's pretty much like the main baseline that they have. Now, Steam has been very rocky about this, for the most part, when it comes to visual novels. In Steam's view, any time a visual novel is in a school, or in a high school setting at all, they are completely and utterly against it with some games. Even when they don't even have any sexual content at all, or implied sexual content. Even if it's just a romance game, Steam has sometimes shut them down. There has been visual novel apocalypses a couple times, and maybe I should document some of the more interesting stories of that and talk about that in the future, but we're not going to be talking about that too much here. Just know that the mature content survey, you're supposed to be as honest as you possibly can, because if Steam reviews your game and they find mature content that's like pretty fucked up that you didn't specify, well, then you're gonna you might get your app deleted, and you might be banned from releasing more apps, depending on how bad you made it. Yeah, it depends. It depends. I've heard varying stories about this. Some people got banned for not specifying certain things, and then they got it back later. Some people just never heard back at all. Some people just didn't bother after it. I don't know. It's weirdness that can happen if you don't fill this out properly. So be honest as you can, and if they still don't like some of the stuff after that, you gotta try to communicate with them, and if they listen, there you go. You don't need a build of the game to have the store page up and to have somebody look at the store page. Some people think that seeing a store page means that the game has to be done. That's not necessarily the case. It doesn't even, not that it has to be done, it has to have some sort of build. That's not the case. And you don't even, if the game's not out yet, you don't need to have a video on your store page. But you do need to have a video on your store page when the game is released. And we'll go over that towards the build section. You don't need an actual build of the game to make the store page and have it visible. In case, for instance, you wanted to post a Steam store page to have people wishlist it long ahead of time in its development. And if you want to link it to stuff like Kickstarters and stuff like that. So you don't need a build for the store page at all. You do need screenshots. I believe they have to be screenshots of the game itself, but I don't think it's crucial that all of the screenshots be images of the gameplay itself. I think Steam does require some screenshots of the gameplay itself when they review the build, when they get towards that part. When they get to reviewing the build itself, I believe they also compare some of the screenshots to make sure the actual game you're showing in the screenshots is what you're saying the game is going to be. Steam will check for this actively with the first check. And we'll go over this now. The build. So when you make a first build for the game, okay, you set up like depots, which are like pretty much sections of the Steam servers where you would upload. And each depot is like for a different platform, like Windows, Mac, Linux. You upload onto them. They make it pretty easy to do with their SDK tools for uploading builds onto the Steam servers. Some of the stuff is kind of ancient and old and annoying, and it's really annoying that they don't just have a way to upload builds directly through the Steam UI. It's really annoying that you have to even use the Steam SDK to do this. But I don't know, maybe there's a method to why they did this. Probably just old code that just haven't bothered to fix, and probably won't, because if it ain't broke, I guess, why bother improving things when we're a multi-billion-dollar company? Oh boy. But for your build to get reviewed and approved, you need a trailer for this part. You need a trailer. Now, this is where we get into some times where you'll see a game trailer that's just gameplay. Sometimes it could be just a main menu of a game. Sometimes it could be literally a black screen. We've seen some of that in the past, where there's like nothing. They don't... for the most part, a human is supposed to review this, but sometimes like random everything gets through. I think for the most part, they don't compare the trailer with the actual game itself. They just need it there for a checkbox. I think when some humans review it, they just view like some of the trailer parts as they don't have a trailer fully finished yet, but they just wanted the build reviewed, I guess. But for the most part, they're not allowed to approve of store pages unless there's a trailer uploaded. So what a lot of pages will do is just upload gameplay if they don't have an actual trailer ready. And then they'll upload a normal trailer towards the release of the game for marketing purposes. Some games never upload an actual trailer and just leave the gameplay video. And that's why you'll get a lot of store pages that are just the gameplay, and sometimes it's a very boring visual novel gameplay where it's just narrator text, not even voice acting, and background art, not even character art. So that's annoying, but it happens. And all it's going to do is kill your marketing if you go that path. But people are allowed to do it. We've noticed in the past, though, sometimes some store pages will not have a trailer, even though the game is out, which is physically impossible with the Steam system currently. And how they do this is they do have a trailer up there, probably just a gameplay recording real quick, so that when a Steam employee approves it, they just go with it. Before they publish the store page, though, because you can get the store page approved before anybody actually sees it. People, they will approve the store page and the build before anybody actually outside can see your store page. They can do that. Once they approve of both of these, you can just delete the trailer video though. There's no check or anything after the first Steam checks. After Steam checks the store page once and approves it, and after Steam checks the build once and approves it, I don't think they ever check it again, unless a lot of people report your content for one reason or another. Then they'll check it again and might send you some emails, angry emails, depending on if you fucked up or not. That's how that works. And then once your store page is reviewed and your game build is reviewed and approved, both of them are approved, your store page has to be up for at least 2 weeks before you can actually release your game to people. Now, from my experience releasing a free game, that does not stop you from giving people beta codes. I learned that you could still do that. You could still give people beta keys to your game. They do have some kind of request system for how keys work, because they know some people or some criminals will steal keys through these kind of programs by like maybe getting into some developer's account without the permission and just generating a bunch of keys and then selling them on places like G2A. They're not allowed to do that at all. And all it does is steal money from the actual developers of the game, because keys generated there, they don't make money for, and then they can be resold onto places like G2A. The developer won't make anything back on it. Steam puts like a limit on the number of keys you can request at a time, and they make you wait a bit. I think there's still an automated process for generating the keys and giving them to you whenever you request them, so I don't think a human has to approve them at that point. But if you do it too many times, then a human probably steps in after the automated system flags you for suspicious activity from requesting too many keys at once in a shady manner, probably. I don't feel like testing that out personally, but I can imagine. I generated quite a few keys for the beta of Rapid Tap. I never heard any bad things from Steam. I was able to generate a ton. I think around like 40 or something keys I gave out. It's a free game, so I wasn't going to lose any money doing it. I was just trying to give it to beta testers to test out some of the bugs I was having with the Steam integration, and I learned a lot from that process. So your store page has to be up for a minimum of 2 weeks before you can actually release the game to people, but you can still give them beta keys if you want. And for the most part, after that, after it's reviewed and your game is fully released, Steam will never check your game again, unless they have some kind of policy change that they need you to enforce with like how your game's marketing is, or if they add some new feature that you must comply with. Like Google Play added the thing recently where you have to mark your game as not serving ads to children. They added that in. Steam might have to add that in the future, and if they do, you have to notify to let people know that you aren't collecting data on children in the game itself on Steam. That might be a thing that'll happen in the future, and they might require you to do it legally. So those are things. They won't check your page outside of this, unless maybe you make a price change you want to make, or if you want to add DLC. Now, DLC is not a thing I've experienced adding myself yet, but I can imagine it's a very similar process, only it's attached to the original project itself. I believe it lists it as its own store listing, kind of like its own game, but I don't believe you have to actually pay to have that separate listing like you would for a Steam game. Now again, I haven't done this myself, so I can't 100% confirm, but for the most part, from my understanding, you're free to add DLC as much as you want once you have that one game ready and going. So free DLC and paid DLC probably has its own share of requirements you have to meet and weirdness you have to go through, but it's probably the same exact process. You probably have to submit a separate store page for it. You probably have to get it approved by Steam once. You probably have to upload a build for it once. In some cases, it's not a build, though. Sometimes it's just adding additional files to the main folder. But I think they will check the assets themselves as they pertain to in the gameplay to make sure this isn't like a scam or anything like that. So that's for DLC. Is there anything else I was going to go over? I thought there was one more thing. I thought there was one more thing. Trading cards and backgrounds and badges. Okay, so if your game is free, like mine is, you are not eligible to release trading cards, badges, emotes, or profile backgrounds. You are not eligible to do that. Other games are. Free games aren't, I believe, unless you have microtransactions in some way or form, and you connect them through Steam. I believe that is the only stipulation that allows you to do that. Now, for some reason, at first with RapidTap, I was not physically allowed to even click in that area. But now I am, and I think that had to do with the fact that it went over the 10K download threshold, and then it allowed me to upload trading card assets and background assets to Steam. So I was like, oh, I guess they gave me the ability to upload onto there. And then while I was excited for that and getting things ready, I looked and saw on the actual page itself, it said, if you are a free game, you are ineligible to upload or release these trading cards. And I was like, well, why'd you even give me access to the page then? And the only thing I could come up with is free games, if they have microtransactions in them, or DLC, paid DLC probably, if you have any money tied to the game in some way, I think, then they allow you to have trading cards, badges, and stuff. Because those things actually have monetary value, so they can't allow people to just make them with free games. So, I mean, it makes sense, but I was just kind of annoyed that they gave me the access to do it, even though I still can't do it. It was weird. And maybe they just changed how the programming on the website worked, and I'm just able to see it now, even if I can't actually use it. But it was just weird that happened. So those are the key things that I can think of with this. Now, some other remaining points I have, and there's only really two. The Steamworks UI, when you become a Steam Direct partner, and you're working with all the background Steamworks interface, it's a bad interface. It is like old, and they updated it a little bit recently, it looks like, but for the most part, a lot of it is still really janky. Like, the assets you have to upload, it gives you like a list though. It's really nice how for the store release, the store page release, and the build release, it will list all the stuff that you have to, the required stuff you have to do in like a task, to-do list of what you have to get ready for the game to be reviewed and the store page to be reviewed. They don't, a lot of the time, there aren't actual clickable links on those things to take you to where you're supposed to upload these things. So there's a lot of graphical assets you have to do for the marketing of your game's store pages. There's a lot of different places you have to navigate to put them on. You have to have the little icon for when people launch your game. You have to have this little icon right here in this corner as well. That's a different thing. You have to have this library asset UI. You have to have the Steam store page actual assets themselves. You have to have the Steam trailer. All of these things, a lot of them are just in completely different areas, some of which are nowhere near each other. And you have to play like the scavenger hunt to find them. It is really annoying to navigate and work through some of those systems. Really annoying. And I don't know if they're ever going to fix it anytime soon, because I guess they don't really need to. A lot of developers are getting by just fine with it, but man, oh man, this should be as easy as it is with the Google Play Store. This should be simplified down to a science if you want to generate the most money as possible, I'd imagine, right? If you want to churn out as many games as possible so that you, as a platform, can make more money, wouldn't you want to make this the easiest part of the development process? And it's annoying as well that you have to use the archaic SDK tools to upload your builds to the servers. Why isn't there just an integrated UI way to drop in your like a zip file with all the files? Why isn't there just the automated way to do that? That would make things so much easier and make everything so much quicker and better. But they don't have that set up, and they probably aren't looking to set it up anytime soon. So there you go. And the graphic requirements are very archaic, as I just kind of described already, where they're just kind of everywhere in the UI, and they're all hyper specific with the different sizes and what they want shown on each image itself. Sometimes you have to have the title in it. Sometimes you're not allowed to have the title in it. Sometimes you need to have gameplay. Sometimes you need to have a logo. It's kind of really, really annoying. I mean, I get it with a lot of it, but most of it just seems like it's just this way because they didn't make their store pages responsive enough to work together, or their program that generates these pages flow in a proper way with the programming. so that you don't have to be hyper super specific with the exact dimensions. And I'm talking like down to, I think one of the dimensions is 462 pixels by like 600 pixels. We're talking that kind of hyper specific, where like it's just weird numbers going on one side for like seemingly no reason other than this is probably what they made back in like fucking 2005, I guess, with how they set it up. I don't even know if Steam was a thing in 2005. But that's some of the annoyances that I can kind of have with that. For the most part, though, despite all of its flaws and the drama between Steam versus the Epic Store, which, by the way, I have no experience with the Epic Store at all as a developer. I think it's kind of a bit of a harder threshold to try to get into that right now. I think I tried looking into it. You need to, at this point, I believe, you have to have like a, kind of like with the Switch. If you want to become a developer for the Nintendo Switch, you have to have like a pretty much a finished project and pitch it to them. It doesn't have to be a big project, but you know, you have to pitch it to them, I believe, and then they have to approve it at this point. I don't know where Epic Games is at with that. I haven't looked up into that for a while, but I know for the Switch, it's like that kind of system. But for everything else like Steam, Itch.io, by the way, I've never uploaded onto Itch.io either, but that one is completely free to upload to. And I believe you keep all of the profits yourself. And in fact, you can set your game to be a pay what you want system, whereas Steam, you can't do that because they want a percentage of your profits every fucking time. I don't believe there's any way to set. I don't think I've ever seen a game on Steam set to pay what you want. I believe you have to go to Itch.io for that. But Itch.io, for the most part, seems like a pretty good platform to use if you have absolutely no money and you don't really care about your game having a big audience, because Itch.io is a great way to have your game never get seen, even worse than the Google Play Store, to be honest. There is a lot of garbage on Itch.io that, for the most part, a lot of Itch.io is just people learning and having fun, so that's all fine. Nobody's really going to Itch.io to release a bunch of scam games or bootleg games. Most of them are just trying to learn or actually releasing their indie game products onto there as a platform. Nobody's really going onto there like the Google Play Store trying to spam ads to children or get people to spend a lot in their microtransactions. No one's really doing that. It's mostly a dumping ground for Kickstarter backer links for like downloads and stuff, in my opinion. And a lot of like student projects and indie beginner fun memes. So Itch.io is fine for that if you just never want your game to be seen. Steam and Apple are probably the best platforms if you want your game to actually be seen. Steam seems way better, in my opinion, than Apple, but maybe I just don't know because I don't own Apple products and don't use the App Store all the time. Maybe other people would know more than me about that. But Steam seems like it is the ideal. It is, if you're selling a PC game, this is the platform you want to be on right now. Now, the Epic Store is probably fighting for it, but for the most part, Steam is the place you want to be right now. And for the most part, you know, it's pretty easy to get into. The price is fairly reasonable. And updates and uploads don't take long at all. The review process can take a couple days, and if you have to make changes, it could take a couple more days for them to review it again. But once they're done with their initial review process, they back off. You can do whatever kind of changes you want. You could change your game 100% completely, and Steam would never know or care until a lot of people report you for something bad that you did. If you don't do anything bad, you're good. Steam doesn't care. Steam doesn't care in that respect, because they're trying to take a hands-off approach with Steam, and it's caused a lot of problems, to be honest, in some cases, where Steam will only respond to certain games that are controversial if a lot of people are reporting it. And they're not stopping it beforehand from actually getting released. Sometimes this is actually Steam's fault. Sometimes, as we discussed before, developers can literally skirt this entirely just to get through that initial review process, and then they can change it completely to be literally whatever they want, because Steam won't check it after that second review. They won't, unless you do like a price change or add additional DLC or something. They won't check it. So, you know, Steam probably might have to do something about that in the future, but for the most part, it looks like this is just how it's going to be, and they're just going to keep with their hands-off approach. For better or worse, that's how it is. And for the most part, it's really been a great way for new developers like myself to start releasing games that people will actually check out and give you feedback on and tell you about their experiences with and send you memes and really weird, obscure fan art of your own face if you happen to have your face as the cover art of the game. Dude, I have sick fan art of Rapid Chan from the guy, Figburn. My dude. And this is pretty much where we're going to end this here. This is pretty much where we're going to end this talk. That is everything you need to know about the Steam uploading process through Steam Direct, how it compares with other platforms, what you'd have to deal with when uploading to Steam. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming to my TED Talk, the Wolf Talk. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Wolf Talk. I will talk to you boys later.
Since I was a young man, I've had this plan to stay in Japan as some type of ninja picture, living like a Christian scripture differ.